The fields of Haran stretched wide under the warm afternoon sun, golden with tall grass swaying gently in the breeze. Leah and Rachel worked together near the flocks, their hands deftly spinning wool into thread. A small stream gurgled nearby, its sound blending with the soft bleating of sheep. Rachel, as always, moved with an effortless grace that seemed to draw light to her. Leah, quieter and more reserved, worked steadily beside her, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to her sister's radiant energy. The bond between them was deep, but so were the differences that often left Leah in Rachel's shadow. Leah's eyes drifted toward the horizon, where she often imagined a life beyond the fields and pastures. She didn't begrudge Rachel her beauty or the attention she received. Still, Leah sometimes wondered what it would feel like to be noticed, not for her work or duty, but for who she was, to be loved for herself. Leah's life had always been overshadowed by Rachel. Rachel was the one who lit up a room, the one who drew people in with her charm and radiance. Leah, though kind and hard-working, often felt invisible beside her younger sister. She didn't begrudge Rachel her beauty, how could she? But sometimes, when Leah was alone, she would let her thoughts wander. What would it be like to be noticed, to be chosen, to be loved? That longing only deepened the day Jacob arrived. Jacob, the son of Isaac, had fled his homeland to escape his brother Esau's wrath. He arrived in Haran seeking refuge with his uncle Laban. When Jacob first saw Rachel at the well, helping her father's flocks drink, it was as if the world stopped. Rachel's beauty captivated him, and in that moment Jacob knew he wanted to marry her. Leah had watched from a distance as the scene unfolded. She saw the way Jacob's eyes lit up when he looked at Rachel, the way Rachel blushed under his gaze. It was clear to everyone that Jacob had fallen for Rachel, and soon after he approached Laban with his intentions. "Uncle Laban," Jacob said one evening as they sat around the fire, "I would like to marry your daughter Rachel. I will work for you for 7 years in exchange for her hand." Laban stroked his beard thoughtfully. 7 years of labor from a man like Jacob, strong, clever, and hard-working, was an offer too good to refuse. "It is better that I give her to you than to some other man," Laban said with a smile. "Stay here and work for me, and she shall be your wife." Leah overheard the conversation from a corner of the tent, her heart sinking as the words confirmed what she already knew. Jacob had no interest in her. His love was for Rachel, as it always seemed to be for others. Leah lowered her eyes and continued with her task, the ache in her chest growing stronger. The 7 years passed quickly for Jacob. His love for Rachel made the time feel like mere days, but for Leah, those years felt endless. She watched as Jacob lavished Rachel with attention and as Rachel's own affection for Jacob blossomed. Leah, as always, remained in the background, unnoticed and unacknowledged. She worked diligently, tending to the household, caring for her family, and keeping her emotions hidden. She loved her sister and didn't want to burden Rachel with her own feelings of loneliness and rejection. When the 7 years were up, Jacob eagerly approached Laban. "Give me my wife," he said. "My time is completed, and I want to make her my own." A grand wedding feast was prepared, and the entire household celebrated. Leah helped with the preparations, her hands busy but her heart heavy. As night fell and the festivities began, Laban called Leah aside. His face was serious, his tone low. "Leah," he said, "I need you to trust me." She looked at her father, confused. "What do you mean?" Laban hesitated, then said, "Jacob cannot marry Rachel first. It is our custom that the elder daughter must marry before the younger. Tonight, you will take Rachel's place." Leah's breath caught in her throat. "Father," she whispered, "he doesn't love me. He loves Rachel." Laban's expression softened, but his resolve was firm. "This is our way," he said. "You are my daughter, and this is what must be done." Tears welled in Leah's eyes, but she nodded. She didn't argue, didn't protest. She had spent her entire life following the rules, doing what was expected of her, and tonight would be no different. As the feast continued, Laban veiled Leah heavily and led her to Jacob's tent under the cover of darkness. The night passed, and when morning came, the truth was revealed. Jacob awoke and saw Leah beside him, his face twisted in shock and anger. "What is this you have done to me?" he shouted, storming out to confront Laban. "I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Laban, ever the schemer, remained calm. "It is not our custom to give the younger daughter in marriage before the elder," he explained. "Finish this bridal week with Leah, and I will give you Rachel as well, in exchange for another 7 years of work." Leah stood at the edge of the tent, hearing every word. Her heart ached at Jacob's rejection, but she wasn't surprised. She had known all along that Jacob's love belonged to Rachel, not to her, yet now she was his wife, bound to him by custom and law, if not by love. As the days passed, Leah tried her best to find a place in Jacob's heart, but it was clear that he saw her as a mistake, a consequence of Laban's deception. Leah's life had always been one of quiet endurance, but now her longing for love felt sharper than ever. She prayed silently to the Lord, hoping for comfort, for hope, for some sign that she wasn't forgotten. Leah sat quietly in her tent, her hands busy spinning wool, but her mind was far away. The reality of her marriage to Jacob was settling over her like a heavy weight. The man she had dreamed of loving was cold and distant. His heart, so full of passion for Rachel, held no room for her. Every glance he gave Rachel, every kind word, felt like a reminder of Leah's place in the shadows. Rachel, for her part, was kind to Leah, but their bond had changed. There was an unspoken tension between them now, a divide neither sister dared to address. Leah didn't blame Rachel. How could she? Rachel had been the one Jacob wanted from the start, but Leah couldn't help the ache in her heart as she watched the love they shared from afar. One night, Leah knelt beside her sleeping mat, tears streaming down her face. She whispered a prayer into the stillness. "Lord, you see me. You know my heart. Jacob doesn't love me, but I believe you do. Please, give me a reason to hope. Let me feel your love, even if I never have his." The Lord heard Leah's prayer, and soon she discovered she was expecting a child. The news brought a flicker of joy to her heart. In her culture, bearing children, especially sons, was a mark of honor and favor. Perhaps this child would make Jacob see her, value her, even love her. When Leah gave birth to a son, she named him Reuben, which means see, a son. She said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." But Jacob's heart remained with Rachel. Though Leah cared for their son and fulfilled her duties as his wife, Jacob's gaze rarely lingered on her for long. He held Reuben briefly, but quickly returned to Rachel's side. Leah felt her hope dimming again, but she refused to give up. Time passed, and Leah bore Jacob another son. She named him Simeon, which means one who hears, saying, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." Her faith in the Lord grew, even as Jacob's love continued to elude her. Each child felt like a sign that God had not forgotten her, even when Jacob seemed to. But Leah's longing for Jacob's affection remained. She poured her heart into her role as a mother, finding comfort in her growing family, but there was always a shadow of sadness lingering behind her smiles. Soon, Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a third son. She named him Levi, meaning attached, and said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons." With each child, Leah hoped that Jacob's heart might soften, that he might finally see her not as a burden or mistake, but as a partner, as someone worthy of his love. But Jacob's heart did not change. His affection for Rachel remained steadfast, while Leah was left on the outskirts of his life. The joy of her children brought some light into her world, but the longing in her heart persisted. One day, as Leah sat watching her sons play, a realization began to settle in her heart. She had spent so much of her life seeking love and validation from others, from her father, from Jacob. But there was one who had always seen her, always loved her. The Lord had heard her cries, blessed her with sons, and shown her that she was not invisible to him. She began to wonder if her worth was not tied to Jacob's love after all, but to the God who had always been by her side. When Leah gave birth to her 4th son, she named him Judah, which means praise. This time, her words were different. "This time," she said, "I will praise the Lord." It wasn't about Jacob anymore. Leah had found something deeper, something unshakable. The God of her ancestors had not forgotten her, and she would anchor her heart in him. Though Leah's life remained complicated, sharing a husband with her sister and enduring Jacob's lack of affection, she began to find strength in her relationship with the Lord. Her prayers became her solace, her children, her joy. Leah was discovering that her worth was not defined by Jacob's rejection, but by God's unwavering love. Despite Leah's newfound peace in the Lord, life in Jacob's household remained a constant struggle. Her relationship with Rachel, once so close, had grown tense. Rachel, though deeply loved by Jacob, had not yet borne him any children, and her frustration grew with each passing year. Leah's steady stream of sons only added to Rachel's pain. Rachel often watched Leah's children with a mix of longing and resentment. One day her emotions spilled over. "Give me children or I'll die," she cried out to Jacob, her voice trembling with desperation. Jacob, already weary from the tensions in his home, snapped back, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" The argument left Rachel in tears, but her resolve hardened. She devised a plan, one that would allow her to claim the role of a mother even if she couldn't bear children herself. "Here is my servant Bilhah," Rachel told Jacob. "Sleep with her, so that she can bear children for me, and through her, I too can build a family." Jacob agreed, and soon Bilhah gave birth to a son. Rachel named him Dan, saying, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son." Not long after, Bilhah bore another son, and Rachel named him Naphtali, declaring, "I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won." Leah overheard Rachel's words, and a familiar ache stirred in her heart. Rachel's jealousy had created a competition between them, one Leah had never wanted. Yet the struggle was real. Leah, who had thought she might finally find peace, now felt drawn back into the battle for Jacob's favor. Not to be outdone, Leah turned to her own servant, Zilpah. Jacob will have children through her as well, Leah decided. When Zilpah bore a son, Leah named him Gad, saying, "What good fortune." When Zilpah had a second son, Leah named him Asher, declaring, "How happy I am. The women will call me happy." But the happiness Leah spoke of was fleeting. Her rivalry with Rachel consumed much of her energy, and her heart still longed for a deeper connection with Jacob. She saw the way he looked at Rachel, the way his love for her never wavered, and she couldn't help but wonder if she would always remain in the background. One day, Leah's eldest son Reuben came in from the fields carrying mandrakes, a plant thought to help with fertility. Rachel noticed and approached Leah. "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes," she said, her tone pleading. Leah's frustration boiled over. "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband?" she snapped. "Will you take my son's mandrakes too?" Rachel hesitated, then made a bold offer. "Very well," she said. "Jacob can spend the night with you in return for your son's mandrakes." Leah agreed, and that night Jacob came to her tent. Soon after, Leah became pregnant again. She gave birth to a fifth son and named him Issachar, saying, "God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband." Later, Leah bore a sixth son, and she named him Zebulun, saying, "God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him 6 sons." Though Leah had many children and had earned the respect of her household, Jacob's love remained firmly with Rachel. Yet Leah's relationship with the Lord continued to grow. She found strength in his faithfulness, even as her earthly struggles persisted. Her prayers became more about gratitude than longing, and her focus began to shift from what she lacked to what she had been given. In time, Leah gave birth to a daughter, whom she named Dinah. Her family had grown large, and though her life was far from easy, she began to see the blessings that surrounded her. Her sons loved her deeply, and their laughter filled her tent with joy. The Lord had not forgotten her, even if Jacob's affection remained out of reach. Leah's heart, though scarred by years of rejection, was slowly healing. She had come to understand that her worth was not measured by Jacob's love or Rachel's rivalry, but by the unwavering love of her God. Years passed, and Leah's children grew strong and capable, forming the foundation of Jacob's household. Though her life had been filled with struggles, Leah began to see the bigger picture of God's plan unfolding around her. She might not have been Jacob's first choice, but she had been chosen by God for a purpose far greater than she could have imagined. Leah's 6 sons and 1 daughter made her a central figure in the family. Her tent bustled with activity, the laughter of children and the work of daily life filling the air. Reuben, her firstborn, often helped in the fields, while Simeon and Levi stood watch over the younger children. Judah, her 4th son, had become a natural leader among his brothers, his strength and wisdom setting him apart. Meanwhile, Rachel finally gave birth to her first son, Joseph. Jacob's joy was immeasurable, and his favoritism toward Rachel and Joseph only deepened. Yet Leah's heart was no longer consumed by jealousy. She had learned to find her worth in God's blessings rather than Jacob's affection. Rachel's death in childbirth with her 2nd son, Benjamin, left the household grieving. Leah mourned the loss of her sister, but she also stepped into a new role, caring for Rachel's sons as her own. Her kindness and strength held the family together during this difficult time, and even Jacob began to rely more on Leah's wisdom and steadfast presence. As Leah grew older, she reflected on her journey, the rejection she had faced, the rivalry with Rachel, and the longing for Jacob's love. Through it all, God had been with her, blessing her with children, sustaining her in her pain, and teaching her that her true worth came from Him. Leah's prayers became ones of gratitude, and her heart rested in the knowledge that she was deeply loved by the Creator of the universe. One day, As Leah sat surrounded by her sons and grandchildren, she realized the scope of the legacy God had given her. From her line would come the tribe of Levi, the priestly tribe who would serve the Lord and lead his people in worship. From Judah's line would come kings, including David, and ultimately the Messiah, Jesus Christ. The unloved sister, the one overlooked and cast aside, had been chosen by God to play a pivotal role in his plan for redemption. Jacob, in his later years, began to see Leah in a new light. Her faithfulness, strength, and devotion to their family had left a lasting impression on him. Though his love for Rachel had always burned brightly, he grew to honor Leah for the woman she was and the role she had played in his life. When Jacob was preparing for his death, he gave instructions to be buried in the family tomb at Machpelah, the burial place of Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah. He chose to be buried beside Leah, recognizing her as his true partner in the legacy God had built through their family. Leah's story is one of quiet endurance, faith in the midst of rejection, and a trust in God that never wavered. Though she was overlooked by those around her, she was never forgotten by God. Her legacy is a testament to the truth that our worth is not defined by the love of others, but by the unfailing love of the Lord. Leah's name would echo through history, not as the unloved sister, but as the mother of nations and a vital part of God's plan to bring salvation to the world.